Oh, Robert Gray.
Yar.
Robert Gray was the captain of the Lady Washington, which was the concert vessel, a small sloop that was to accompany the Columbia. After leaving off with Samuel Brown in Newport, we headed up the road to Tiverton, Rhode Island. Tiverton's the place where the refugees from the British occupation in Newport would have headed, including Samuel Brown on his way to Boston. It's kind of curious that at the same time, Robert Gray, who was 21 at the time, also left his hometown of Tiverton and headed to Boston. Both men settled in the North End, so we headed to the Boston Public Library to see if we could find any record of Robert Gray's Revolutionary War service. We headed to the research library and then on to the microfilm room, where we came up with precious little. Supposedly Robert Gray was in the Continental Navy, but we couldn't find any records of that. So we headed up to Alstead, New Hampshire, to talk to somebody who might have some information on the background of Captain Robert Gray.
I'm 7 generations descended from Robert Gray.
Okay.
And so my father's name is Robert Gray Twombly. And I'm William Robert Twombly, so that Robert keeps showing up. And it's been part of our kind of family history. You know, first American sea captain to sail around the world. And I think even in the larger family there might even be a sea chest and some other historical items that have transcended time and are still within the family.
Do you know anything about his background, you know, where, having grown up in Tiverton, Rhode Island, or any service that he had before he started on this you know, historic voyage?
Some assumptions that he would have been involved in the merchant marines or in privateering, and there's some assumptions that he would have been involved in the Revolutionary War in some capacity.
We have looked for a lot of information on his background, and it's kind of murky.
Just as we don't have his journal, if there was a journal from Robert Gray, we're missing some details of his life that preceded and also after the voyages of the Columbia and Lady Washington. So it is a little bit ambiguous.
It was a private trading venture, and so all those records were private.
You know, the stories that we know are the stories that have been written, and you know, we obviously as European descendants come from a written history, and we don't pass stories down particularly well orally, and so what's not written 7 generations after the fact, it's hard to know exactly what was going on.
Another Gray family member, William N. Twombly, offered to take some documents out of a secure location and make them available to us at his home. So you're a direct descendant of Robert Gray, then?
I am.
What was it like growing up with this story?
My parents didn't really just talk about Robert Gray very much, so I think I was much older, when I began to realize the significance of what he had done.
What's inside this box here?
Well, when I was a child, this box was always in our cellar at home, and I never knew what was in it. But finally I got so curious that I took a screwdriver and I broke open the lock, and I opened up the box, and inside were only papers. So I was very disappointed because I was hoping for something far more interesting.
A treasure.
Treasure. It wasn't until many years later that we actually looked at the papers. These are original papers from Robert Gray's. Many of them are from his voyages.
The account book of the sloop Washington commencing October 6th, 1787 at sea. So that would have been a week after they left. That is definitely something that we would want to see. I've never seen that before.
Well, we have bills of lading and account records. We have lots of receipts. We have inventories of the ship. We have letters from and to the owners. We have the list of owners.
I'm finding a letter right here dated January 27th. Yeah, Boston, January 22nd, 1787, which is great. This is exactly what I was looking for all along. Boston, 2nd March 1787, to Robert Gray. Sir, you having the command of the ship Pacific, on orders to you are to proceed from hence to Charleston, South Carolina, with a possible dispatch on your arrival there. We are wishing for the success of your voyage, your friends and owners, Samuel Brown and Crowell Hatch.
Oh.
They were two of the owners that I just talked about who were slave traders. He's going to bring the ship Pacific to South Carolina. I had heard about this, but I couldn't find the source of it, and I didn't know where it was. All he was delivering the ship and cargo and follow instructions from there. So this letter was the first evidence that we found linking Robert Gray to Samuel Brown and Crowell Hatch prior to the voyages of the Columbia and Lady Washington. Then we were really surprised to find a connection to another very familiar name. Kendrick? Charleston, May 16, 1787, telling him to take Codman's 17 bolts of Russia duck in the hands of Mr. Gardner, which I wish you to put on board Kendrick, taking his bill of lading to be delivered to my brother John Codman in Boston.
So this is 1787.
Men began to work for the ship Columbia. August 2nd, 1787. Of receipts for the Columbia: chocolate, sugar, rum, sugar, chocolate, rum, sugar, chocolate, rum, sugar, chocolate. In August, the ship Columbia is being provisioned to Codman Wharf. In September, Robert Gray is bringing the Lady Washington into Castle Roads in Boston Harbor. A few weeks later, they would leave on the round-the-world voyage. The facts that we've known so far are simply that Robert Gray was born on May 10th, 1755, in the town of Tiverton. What's it like holding on to these precious documents?
So I learned a lot today from you. And I'm glad that they were helpful to you.
8:15. Started off the day in New Hampshire, speaking with one member of the Gray family and looking for any information at all that we could find about Robert Gray. By the end of the day, we actually found it. Documents as to what Robert Gray was doing before the Columbia left. Working for Crowell Hatch and Samuel Brown. Possibly having deals with John Kendrick. All these people involved in the Columbia expedition. We've got one more person to cover. Second officer of the Columbia, Joseph Ingraham. And our story starts off here in Boston.
They're gonna get to you to find out what they need to. They're gonna get to you.